Before commencing any electrical work, safety is paramount. Always turn off the power at the circuit breaker or remove the fuse that supplies power to the switches before starting any wiring. Use a non-contact voltage tester to verify the power is off. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it's best to hire a qualified electrician. Always adhere to local electrical codes and regulations. To wire 2 3-way switches and 1 4-way switch, you will need the following materials. Firstly, 2 3-way switches. Secondly, 1 4-way switch. Thirdly, electrical wire, typically 14/2 or 12/2 gauge, depending on your local electrical codes and amperage of the circuit. Fourthly, wire nuts for making secure connections. Fifthly, electrical tape for insulating the connections. Sixthly, a screwdriver to tighten the screws on the switches. And seventhly, an electrical tester to verify the circuit is de-energized and later to test the connections. Now let's discuss the wiring process. First step is to label the wires. Use electrical tape or a permanent marker to clearly label each wire. This will prevent confusion and ensure correct connections. Firstly, the black wire is typically the hot wire, which carries the electrical current. Secondly, the white wire is generally the neutral wire, which provides a return path for the current. Thirdly, the red wire can be designated as Traveler 1, connecting 1 3-way switch to the 4-way switch. Fourthly, the blue wire can be labeled as Traveler 2, connecting the other 3-way switch to the 4-way switch. Fifthly, the yellow wire can be used as the common wire, running from the 4-way switch to one of the 3-way switches. Now let's discuss wiring the 3-way switches. Each 3-way switch has 3 terminals, 2 brass screws and 1 dark or common screw. Connect the Traveler wires red and blue to the brass screws on each 3-way switch. The order in which you connect them doesn't matter. Connect the common wire yellow to the dark screw on one of the 3-way switches. Connect the hot wire black to the remaining brass screw on the same 3-way switch. Connect the neutral wire white to the silver screw on the other 3-way switch. Next is wiring the 4-way switch. A 4-way switch has 4 terminals, typically 2 brass screws and 2 dark screws or alternative markings. Connect the Traveler wires red and blue to the 2 brass screws in the 4-way switch. Again, the order does not matter. Connect the common wire yellow to one of the dark screws in the 4-way switch. The remaining dark screw on the 4-way switch will connect to the corresponding wire from the other 3-way switch, which is typically the common wire from the light fixture. Now connect the wires from the 3-way and 4-way switches together using wire nuts. Ensure that each connection is secure. Wrap the wire nuts with electrical tape for added insulation and safety. Once all connections are made, carefully tuck the wires back into the electrical boxes and secure the switches. Finally, test the switches. After completing the wiring, turn the power back on at the circuit breaker. Test the switches to ensure they function correctly. If the light doesn't turn on or off as expected, double check your wiring and connections. Make sure the hot wire is properly connected to the correct terminal on one of the 3-way switches and that the Traveler wires are correctly connected between the 3-way and 4-way switches. When working with electrical wiring, it's essential to understand the basic principles of electrical circuits and safety. Here are some additional points to consider. Firstly, wire gauge refers to the thickness of the wire. The appropriate wire gauge depends on the amperage of the circuit. For example, a 15 amp circuit typically requires 14 gauge wire, while a 20 amp circuit usually needs 12 gauge wire. Always check your local electrical codes to ensure you're using the correct wire gauge. Secondly, wire color coding is a standard practice to help identify the function of each wire. While the specific colors used may vary depending on local codes, the typical color coding is as follows: black for hot, white for neutral, green or bare copper for ground, red and blue for travelers, and yellow for common or switch legs. Thirdly, grounding is an essential safety measure. All electrical boxes and devices should be properly grounded to provide a path for fault current to flow back to the source, tripping the circuit breaker and preventing electrical shock. Connect the green or bare copper ground wire to the grounding screw in the electrical box and to the grounding terminal on the switches. Fourthly, electrical boxes are enclosures that protect the wiring and connections. Use the correct size and type of electrical box for your application. Ensure the box is securely mounted and that all wires are properly contained within the box. Fifthly, wire nuts are used to make secure connections between wires. When using wire nuts, strip the insulation from the ends of the wires, twist the wires together, and then screw the wire nut onto the twisted wires. Ensure the connection is tight and secure. Sixthly, electrical tape is used to insulate connections and prevent electrical shock. Wrap electrical tape around the wire nuts and any exposed wires to provide an additional layer of protection. Seventhly, circuit breakers and fuses are safety devices that protect electrical circuits from overcurrents. If the current in a circuit exceeds the rated capacity of the circuit breaker or fuse, the device will trip or blow, interrupting the flow of current and preventing damage to the wiring and equipment. Eighthly, always follow local electrical codes and regulations. Electrical codes vary from location to location, so it's important to familiarize yourself with the specific codes that apply to your area. Contact your local building department or qualified electrician for more information. Remember, electrical work can be dangerous if not performed correctly. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it's always best to hire a qualified electrician to ensure the work is done safely and in compliance with all applicable codes and regulations. Understanding the basics of electrical wiring and safety is essential for any homeowner or DIY enthusiast. By following these guidelines and taking the necessary precautions, you can safely and effectively wire 3-way and 4-way switches in your home. Remember to always turn off the power before starting any electrical work, label the wires clearly, use the correct wire gauge and color coding, and follow all applicable codes and regulations. If you are unsure about any aspect of the wiring process, consult with a qualified electrician. They can provide guidance and ensure that the work is done safely and correctly. By taking the time to learn and understand the principles of electrical wiring, you can save money on electrical repairs and improve the safety and functionality of your home's electrical system. Here are some additional tips for working with electrical wiring. Firstly, always use the proper tools for the job. This includes wire strippers, pliers, screwdrivers, and an electrical tester. Using the right tools will make the job easier and safer. Secondly, never work on live electrical circuits. Always turn off the power at the circuit breaker or fuse box before starting any electrical work. Thirdly, be careful not to damage the insulation on the wires. Damaged insulation can create a shock hazard. Fourthly, make sure all connections are tight and secure. Loose connections can cause electrical problems and create a fire hazard. Fifthly, if you are working in a damp or wet environment, take extra precautions to avoid electrical shock. Wear rubber gloves and shoes, and make sure the area is well ventilated. Sixthly, if you are unsure about any aspect of the wiring process, consult with a qualified electrician. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Seventhly, always test your work after you are finished. Use an electrical tester to make sure the circuit is properly wired and that there are no shorts or ground faults. Eighthly, keep a copy of the wiring diagram for future reference. This will make it easier to troubleshoot problems and make changes to the wiring in the future. Wiring 3-way and 4-way switches can seem complicated, but with the right knowledge and preparation, it can be a manageable task. Remember to always prioritize safety and follow all applicable codes and regulations. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician to do the work for you.